Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today we are taking a philosophical journey right to the heart of ancient Chinese thought, into the Analects of Confucius. And we're going to unpack a really critical question.
It's a question that sort of defines his entire project, really.
Exactly. What happens when a sage, a teacher, builds one of the most enduring ethical systems in all of human history by almost completely setting aside the metaphysical?
Right, he spends his whole life teaching human duty, how to structure a government, how to perfect yourself morally, and yet...
And yet he tells his followers to respect the divine, but, and this is the key phrase, to keep aloof from it.
to keep your distance.
So today we're diving deep into that surprising balance between human effort and cosmic fate. We're looking at what the master said, and maybe more importantly what he didn't say, about heaven, about spirits, and about where morality even comes from.
It's a fascinating contrast because, Confucius wasn't trying to be a revolutionary. He wasn't challenging the existing beliefs about the cosmos.
He was more of a manager.
Yeah. A brilliant resource allocator, I'd say. He looked at the chaos of his time, the warring states period, and he just concluded the crisis was fundamentally human.
It wasn't a spiritual problem.
Not at all. It was a crisis of conduct, of government, of education. So from that point of view, the spiritual realm, all the unknowable stuff, it was a resource drain, a distraction.
So the big idea in the Analects that the only place you can really get any work done morally is right here and now.
The here and now among people. We're going to look at how he built this complete, really robust moral universe without ever needing a final theological answer.
Okay, let's unpack that, this core idea of focusing on the human. Let's start with how Confucius saw his own job, because he didn't claim to be a prophet, right? Or some kind of innovator.
No, not at all. He was, by his own admission, a conduit for the past. He said it explicitly. He was a transmitter and not a maker, believing in and loving the ancients.
A transmitter, not a maker? I mean, that's not false modesty, is it?
No, it's his whole philosophy right there. It was a deeply held stance. He truly believed that a golden age of social harmony had already happened back in the early Zhou dynasty.
So his mission wasn't to invent something new.
It was to excavate, to restore those perfect ancient ways that he felt had been lost to chaos.
That makes him so different from other founders of major philosophies or religions. They so often claim direct revelation, some kind of brand new insight. Confucius is basically saying.
He's saying, the truth is old, I just know how to read the blueprints.
And those blueprints, they laid out a very specific curriculum, didn't they?
A very specific one.
Cool.
When you look at the 4 things he taught consistently, it was letters, ethics, devotion of soul, and truthfulness. You see, it's an education system completely geared toward one thing. Producing capable civil servants and morally grounded individuals. He wasn't training theologians, he was training statesmen. He was training the Junzi, the superior man.
Let's break those pillars down. Letters isn't just about learning to read, is it?
Oh no. It means deep, deep immersion in the classics. The odes, the book of history, the book of rites.
Why was that so critical?
Because the letters, the culture, it provided the framework. It gave the models for moral action. Ethics gives you the theory, devotion gives you the sincerity, truthfulness gives you integrity. But without that foundation in letters, you have no context, no precedent.
It all sounds incredibly practical, almost like a vocational and ethical training program designed to fix a broken society. And for the student, the main thing was just learning and self-cultivation.
The emphasis on learning is just relentless. I mean, the very first line of the Analects is a celebration of it. Is it not pleasant to learn with a constant perseverance and application?
Learning isn't a chore. The effort is the point.
The sustained effort is the virtuous life. And the joy he talks about, the joy of finding the right way. That's the ultimate reward. He says if you hear the right way in the morning, you can die in the evening without any regret.
Wow. Okay, so that sets the internal standard. But what I find so interesting is what he excluded, what he deliberately left out of the conversation.
This is maybe the most defining feature of his teaching style. The text tells us he seldom spoke of 3 specific things.
Right, which were profitableness, the appointments of heaven, and perfect virtue.
Exactly.
Okay, so profitableness. That seems straightforward. He saw chasing wealth as something that just gets in the way of being a good person.
It corrodes virtue, yeah. It makes your motivation impure. But what about the other 2?
Right. Why avoid talking about the appointments of heaven, fate, destiny, and why avoid talking about perfect virtue? Isn't that the goal? To be perfectly virtuous?
Well, avoiding perfect virtue or completeness is kind of a tactical move. If he defined it too clearly, if he said, here's the finish line, then people might stop trying once they think they've reached it.
So you make it a goal you're always striving for but can never quite claim.
Exactly. It keeps the motivation going. And as for the appointments of heaven,
That feels like the big one. That's where he draws the philosophical line. If heaven decides our fate, why not talk about it?
because it deals with the unknowable
Yeah.
and the uncontrollable. And for Confucius, spending your time in endless speculation about destiny, well, it doesn't help you do your job right now.
It's a distraction.
A huge philosophical distraction. It can lead to fatalism or worse, arrogance. He was laser focused on the immediate, observable behavior that you could actually correct.
So the great expert on human behavior, on social order, has to draw a firm boundary around anything that's metaphysical or speculative.
That's the context. He was fundamentally concerned with how people should live together on Earth. A perfect example is his idea of rectifying names.
Right.
He says if the words we use, like prince or father or subject, don't match the actual moral behavior of the person in that role, then society just falls apart.
The social fabric unravels.
Completely. So his whole task was to fix the definitions, to make sure behavior aligned with the name. Everything else flowed from that very practical, ethical starting point.
And the person who achieves this, the mechanism for it, is the superior man, the Yunzi. What are the moral cornerstones of this ideal person?
The Yunzi is the working model for Confucianism. He's defined by his moral breadth. He is Catholic, meaning universal, and not partisan. He doesn't join cliques.
He's focused internally on virtue, not on external things like comfort.
And he's very careful with his words versus his actions. He's earnest in what he does, but slow to speak. His whole public presence is just quiet moral gravity.
That idea, action before speech, is so important. It tells you right away, this isn't just a theoretical system. You have to live it. And virtue isn't something you pray for from outside. It's a switch you flip inside yourself.
Exactly. When a student asks if virtue is some far-off thing, Confucius says, I wish to be virtuous, and lo, virtue is at hand. It's not something you wait for. It's available the second you sincerely commit.
But that active pursuit requires a balance, doesn't it? Which brings us to that famous tension.
Learning without thought is labor lost. Thought without learning is perilous.
Let's break that down. It seems so simple, but it's incredibly deep.
It's one of the most intellectually sophisticated lines in the whole book. If you memorize the classics, you perform the rites, but you don't reflect on it personally,
You become a robot.
an automaton. It's
Yeah.
labor lost.
Yeah.
But if you only engage in your own internal thoughts, your own speculation, without grounding it in the wisdom of the ancients,
That's when it's perilous.
that's when you fall into arrogance or just inventing your own flawed, lonely moral path.
It's the difference between being a scholar and being a sage, maybe. A scholar knows the past, but a sage integrates it with constant self-reflection.
That's a great way to put it.
You know, if you apply that to today, it sounds like Confucius would have really disliked something like a social media feed.
That's a fascinating connection. Tell me more.
Well, it's a constant stream of thought, right? Of opinion, but often without any external objective learning to ground it. It's all peril, no learning.
That's a great point. The peril today is often passionate thought that's only informed by a very narrow feedback loop. Confucius insists you have to test your personal reflections against the objective moral standards and historical lessons. That's the only way to find a path that's both firm and adaptable.
Okay, so this grounding in the immediate knowable world, it leads us right to the core tension of the analects, his relationship with the spiritual. He was famous even then for deliberately avoiding it.
His avoidance was basically policy. As we mentioned, he refused to talk about extraordinary things, feats of strength, social disorder, and most importantly, spiritual beings.
And to really feel the impact of that, you have to remember the world he lived in.
Absolutely. This was a world just saturated with local gods, ancestral spirits, ghosts, omens, divination. For the most influential teacher of his day to just draw a hard line and say, we're not talking about that, that was a radical statement.
And you see him enforce that boundary when his students push him on it. The conversation with Qi Lu about serving the dead is just a masterclass in pragmatism.
It perfectly captures his human-first approach. Qi Lu asks him, how should we serve the spirits of the dead?
And Confucius just immediately turns the question right back to the living.
He says, while you are not able to serve men, how can you serve their spirits? It's an argument about moral sequencing. Your duty to the tangible world, your family, your community, it comes first. Mastering that is the prerequisite for anything else.
It's like he's saying, you're asking me about advanced calculus when you haven't even mastered basic addition.
Exactly. But Zilu, being persistent, he pushes it. He follows up by asking about the ultimate unknowable, death itself.
And Confucius just holds the line perfectly.
He says, while you do not know life, how can you know about death? I mean, that is arguably the ultimate manifesto of Confucian humanism.
He's not saying there's no afterlife. He's not denying anything.
No, he's saying our minds are equipped to understand one thing: life. Therefore, focusing our moral and intellectual energy on death is a waste of time. The field of study is existence, not non-existence.
So until all the duties to the living are mastered, any concern about spirits or the afterlife is a kind of intellectual luxury, a distraction.
And he didn't just model this, he actually codified this restraint as the definition of wisdom. When Fansha asked him what wisdom is, he gave the answer that defines the whole Confucian relationship with the divine.
Which is?
To give oneself earnestly to the duties due to men, and, while respecting spiritual beings, to keep aloof from them, may be called wisdom.
That phrase, to keep aloof from them, is just.
Yeah.
It's monumental. It's an official order to maintain operational distance. It's not atheism, which would deny they exist.
Right.
It's more like a methodological agnosticism. It denies their relevance to the project of being a good person.
You've hit the nail on the head. He mandates respect. You don't go around dissing the gods or tradition, but a wise person keeps their distance. Why? Because chasing spiritual secrets distracts from the main mission: human improvement.
And if you apply that to modern life, I mean, how much energy do we spend on debates or anxieties about things completely outside our control?
Instead of focusing on the tangible duties we owe to our family, our colleagues, our community, it's the ultimate filter, isn't it? If I can't act on it or verify it, it's not a wise use of my limited moral energy.
Okay, but this brings us to ritual, to lit. If he's keeping aloof from the spirits, why is ritual still so absolutely central to Confucianism? Why all the elaborate ceremonies?
Because for Confucius, lit isn't primarily about talking to the divine. It's essential social technology. It's the language of sincerity and respect that keeps society running.
He sacrificed to the dead and spirits as if they were present.
Exactly. Notice the conditionality. As if the performance of the ritual is what cultivates the necessary internal feeling, reverence, sincerity, filial piety inside the person doing it.
But wait, if the point is just to generate the feeling, the as-if sincerity, isn't there a risk that the whole system is just hypocritical? Is he saying you should just go through the motions even if you don't literally believe?
That's a common criticism, but he would say the sincerity is directed toward the relationship and the social structure, not necessarily the spirit itself. The ritual is the container.
Oh, okay.
If the sincerity is missing, if you do the ceremony without reverence or you mourn without real sorrow, then the whole thing collapses. That's hypocrisy. He said he'd rather have deep, real sorrow than perfect, insincere observance. The ritual's value is its psychological and social effect on the living.
So the external ritual protects the internal sincerity, and that's why improper worship is so bad. Sacrificing to a spirit that isn't yours is called flattery.
Flattery is the perfect word. You're trying to manipulate a powerful entity outside your proper sphere to get an advantage. It shows a lack of moral propriety. The only sacrifice that matters is the one that aligns with your specific, defined human duties.
The story about the sheep sacrifice really brings this whole tension to a head, doesn't it?
It really does. So Sitkong, who's clearly the practical one.
The accountant of the group.
Right. He wants to get rid of the ritual offering of a sheep on the first of the month because, it's expensive. He sees it as just economically wasteful.
And the master's reply is so quick and so final. Say you love the sheep, I love the ceremony.
It's a defense of institutional integrity. Confucius knows that if you start chipping away at rituals based on what's practical or economical, you start eroding the whole moral foundation of society.
The ceremony is the glue.
It's the glue of propriety and continuity. It connects you to your ancestors and to the social order. Losing a sheep is a small price. Losing the ceremony is losing the definition of a civilized world.
Okay, so now we have to talk about the great exception to all this spiritual restraint. He kept aloof from local spirits, but he had this intense, profound reverence for Tian, for heaven.
Right. Tian is not one of the spiritual beings he avoided. It's something much bigger. It's the overarching cosmic principle. It's nature. It's destiny. It's the ultimate moral source. It's universal, and you can't resist it.
And he said that he only came to understand it very late in his life. At 50, he knew the decrees of heaven. Why so late?
Well, think about the stages he lists before that. At 15, he set his mind on learning. At 30, he stood firm. At 40, he had no doubts. Knowing the decrees of heaven is the final capstone, and you can only get there after decades of tough, ethical self-cultivation.
So it's an understanding born from experience, not from a sudden revelation.
Exactly. And this knowledge of heaven's decrees, it provides a kind of stability, a framework for acceptance. When his worthy follower Bonyu was dying horribly, Confucius didn't question it. He just said it was the appointment of heaven, alas.
It's a way of focusing you back on what you can actually control.
Right. The famous line is, death and life have their determined appointment, riches and honors depend upon heaven. That sounds fatalistic, but it's actually ethically empowering. If things like how long you live or how rich you get are decided by forces beyond your control, then you're freed from obsessing about them. You can put all your energy into the one thing that is in your command, which is your own internal virtue.
So it reframes your ambition. You don't aim for wealth, you aim for righteousness. But heaven is more than just impersonal fate, isn't it? It seems to act like a moral overseer.
It absolutely does. It's the ultimate inescapable moral court. He who offends against heaven has none to whom he can pray.
Wow.
Since he's already rejected all the local gods and intermediaries, offending Tin is total ethical bankruptcy. It means you've violated the universal moral law and there's nowhere left to appeal. It gives every action this immense gravity.
And you can feel that this cosmic mission is what validated Confucius's own life's work. There's that story where his life is in danger in Kuang.
And he's not afraid at all, because he believes heaven will not allow his mission, the cause of truth, to die. He sees himself as a necessary instrument, as the bell with its wooden tongue.
It's how he validates himself. He doesn't need a god whispering in his ear. He just recognizes his own role within the heaven-determined moral order.
And he believed his own virtue was produced by heaven. So when he swears, wherein I have done improperly, may heaven reject me, may heaven reject me, he's appealing to the highest possible standard to prove his integrity.
So the superior man stands in awe of heaven's ordinances.
Yeah.
Not out of, like, superstitious fear,
Yeah.
but because he recognizes that the moral framework he's trying to build in society is ultimately backed up by the very structure of the cosmos.
That is the crucial link. The human moral project is tied to the cosmic order. And you see this most clearly in how he talks about government, where the right to rule comes directly from Tian.
The mandate of heaven. The old sage kings would say things like, the heaven-determined order of succession now rests in your person.
Exactly. The right to rule isn't based on who your father was or how big your army is. It's a moral assignment, and it's judged by heaven. And if a ruler loses his virtue, he risks having that mandate taken away.
It provides the ultimate ethical accountability for the state. You don't rule by divine right. You rule by divine virtue.
And if you fail, the people have a cosmic justification to rebel.
This all funnels directly into his political philosophy then. Government is just ethics on a grand scale. And the ruler's personal example is the engine of the entire state.
It's the most compelling part of his politics. Forget about complex laws or bureaucracies. The single most important thing is the ruler's own moral character. He uses that analogy of the North Star.
Right. He who exercises government by means of his virtue may be compared to the North Polar Star, which keeps its place and all the stars turn towards it.
The North Star doesn't do anything. It doesn't move or force action. It just is. It holds its position, and everything else in the state naturally aligns around that fixed moral point.
So moral consistency is more effective than aggressive laws.
Way more effective. He contrasts it directly. If you lead people by laws and control them with punishment, he said, they'll find ways to get around it, and they'll have no sense of shame.
But if you lead them by virtue and guide them with propriety, with Li,
they develop shame, and then, crucially, they develop genuine goodness.
And shame, in this context, is the internalization of that moral code. It's not just avoiding punishment. It's feeling that the act itself is wrong.
And that starts with the leader. The entire government rests on the leader's own self-correction. He asks, if a minister can't rectify himself, what has he to do with rectifying others?
It's the ethical bedrock. Governance is just the outward projection of inward virtue. And this is why he rejects state violence as the main tool of control.
It's so clear. When someone asks him if he should kill the unprincipled people to help the good people, he completely rejects the idea. He uses that analogy of the wind and the grass.
The grass bends where the wind blows.
The ruler is the wind, the people are the grass.
Yeah.
Let your desires be for what is good, and the people will be good. A government that has to resort to killing its own citizens has shown a failure of moral leadership, not a lack of force.
This also radically changes what makes a state stable.
Mm.
When he's asked about the essential parts of a government, his priorities are just arresting.
The three elements, right. Enough food, enough military equipment, and the confidence of the people.
And then comes the test. He's forced to give one up. First, he says, get rid of the military equipment. Okay. But then he says he would sacrifice food before confidence.
Yeah.
Let's just sit with that for a second. Sacrificing material survival food for an abstract idea like trust.
Mhm.
What does that tell us?
It tells us that legitimacy is the single most critical resource a state has. He says, from of old, death has been the lot of all men. But if the people have no faith in their rulers, there is no standing for the state. He accepts that people die. That's up to heaven. But a state that has no moral authority, no trust from its people, has no foundation at all. A trusting population will starve for a just ruler. A distrusting one will rebel against a rich one.
That is a powerful lesson for today. It means your budget and your military are secondary to the public's perception of your integrity.
It's all about that moral commitment.
And he even laid out a practical checklist for this. The 5 excellent things for a proper government.
This is his operational manual for benevolent rule. The first is being beneficent without great expenditure.
So don't waste money on huge vanity projects. Focus on policies that let people benefit naturally.
Exactly. Facilitate their prosperity, don't just show off state power. The second is laying tasks without repining. This means choosing labor's taxes, military service that the people understand are necessary, not just random burdens.
So they comply without resentment.
Yep.
Okay. The third one, pursuing desire without covetousness. That seems a bit tricky. How do you do that?
Because if the ruler's only desire is for good government, for the good of the people, then achieving that goal isn't personal greed. It turns personal ambition into a public good.
Okay, that makes sense. And the last 2 are all about demeanor, about how the ruler carries himself.
Which shows how much moral authority depends on conduct. Fourth is maintaining dignified ease without pride.
He has to be serious and respectful, and then people will naturally respect him. He doesn't need to be arrogant.
And the final one, majestic without being fierce. It's about inspiring awe through your moral rectitude, not through cruelty or brute force. He was very clear that killing people without teaching them first is just cruelty. Good government has to be a process of teaching first and enforcing second.
So the success of this whole system, whether it's the state or just the family, it all comes back to the individual's journey, the path of the disciple trying to become the Junzi.
And it is a lifelong, strenuous effort, a constant audit of yourself. You see it perfectly in the daily self-review of Sung, one of his best students.
He had a 3-point checklist every day.
Right. Am I being faithful in my business dealings? Am I being sincere with my friends? And have I mastered what my teacher taught me?
A constant reality check. Am I trustworthy? Am I sincere? Am I applying what I've learned?
And this path requires specific tools. He insisted that studying the odes poetry and the rules of propriety were absolutely essential.
Why the odes? I mean, it seems a little strange to say you have to read poetry to be a good government official.
The odes do 2 things. First, they regulate and refine your feelings. They teach you emotional nuance, which stops the pursuit of virtue from becoming cold and rigid.
And second,
They are the shared cultural vocabulary. He told his own son, if you do not learn the odes, you will not be fit to converse with. They give you the shared references you need for any kind of sophisticated conversation.
and propriety, lie, is essential because without it, your character can't be established. It gives structure to your inner virtue.
Without lie, all that inner goodness is just raw potential. It has no coherent external form. But even with all these tools, you're still going to make mistakes.
Of course. And for Confucius, the real failure isn't making the mistake.
It's the refusal to fix it. He says, to have faults and not reform them, this indeed should be pronounced having faults. It's the moral inertia, the lack of commitment to growth. That's the real sin.
And that process of self-correction leads right to the idea of the mean, the middle way. He was so wary of extremes, even extremes of good things.
Yes, that dialogue where Zegong is comparing 2 other students, Shi and Shang, is perfect.
Zekong says she is better because he goes beyond the standard while Shang falls short.
And Confucius just rejects that simple comparison. He says, to go beyond is as wrong as to fall short. That is the definition of the mean. Being overzealous, too rigid, it messes up social harmony just as much as being lazy.
Virtue requires balance, not zealotry, not passivity. You even see it in how he compares two types of poor men. He prefers the poor man who is cheerful over the one who is simply not proud.
Because not being proud is a passive state, it's the absence of a fault, but being cheerful and loving propriety, those are active, cultivated virtues. The superior man isn't defined by what he avoids, but by what he actively pursues inside himself.
And even after setting this incredibly high standard for everyone, Confucius himself never claimed he'd reached the top. He had this remarkable humility.
Fiercely humble. He flat out refused to be called a sage or a man of perfect virtue. He defined himself only by his effort, striving without satiety and teaching without weariness. His identity was the endless process, the search.
He saw himself as a devoted student of history,
Well,
one who was fond of antiquity and earnest in seeking it there. He wasn't relying on some innate genius.
no, he was relying on history. And this brings us right back to the power of learning over just thinking. We have that incredible personal story he tells about his own early struggles.
Right, the realization that just thinking by yourself is useless. I've been the whole day without eating and the whole night without sleeping, occupied with thinking. It was of no use. The better plan is to learn.
That is the ultimate anti-speculation statement. He tried being the solitary thinker, trying to reason his way to the truth on his own, and he found it was a dead end. The better plan, learning, means grounding yourself in the objective historical wisdom of the past.
It seems Confucius, facing a world of total chaos, decided to build his entire ethical system on observable human potential and really rigorous self-discipline.
And by declaring the metaphysical realm outside the scope of practical wisdom, he forced all that human energy back into the social world. He found the source of morality not in a divine revelation or fear of punishment.
But in our social nature and our potential for goodness, if we just put in the effort.
His whole system hinges on self-correction and the power of ritual to keep society in order. He keeps a necessary awe for the moral power of heaven, but the wisdom he's offering insists that our duties to each other and building social harmony are the only arenas where our effort really counts.
So what does this all mean for us today? Confucius chose to focus only on serving men, saying that not knowing life means you can't possibly know death. If we accept his basic premise, that wisdom means setting aside the unknowable to focus on immediate human duties, do you think modern society actually follows that advice?
That's a critical question about our focus, isn't it? We are just saturated with information and endless debates on theology, on complex global politics, on existential risks in the far future, and so many of these are completely outside our immediate sphere of influence.
So are we reserving our energy for our immediate measurable duties, like building reliable local communities, having honest relationships, and working on ourselves?
Or are we just wasting our energy contemplating the unanswerable, forgetting the urgent practical needs of our neighbors and our own conduct? The superior man focuses on the present practical duty. The lesser person is perpetually distracted by the remote and the speculative. And that choice, which was laid out 2,500 years ago, remains entirely our own.